Hello, and welcome back to I'll Have What She's Having, the podcast all about pleasure and living a fully turned on life. And today we're stepping into a conversation that might feel kind of futuristic. It did to me. We're talking about AI companions. Because what happens when we start forming relationships with AI? And it already started in a very real way. Like, people are going to relationship counseling with their AI partner or girlfriend or boyfriend, which blows my mind. And so this raises questions like, what does that mean for intimacy? And what does that change about intimacy? And what kinds of neural pathways is that creating for people? And who is it that it's influencing most? And I'll give you a hint there. It is the younger generations. How is this going to influence how we relate to each other as humans? And whether we like it or not, it is already happening, right? People are turning to AI for conversation and companionship and emotional support and even intimacy. And so today we're exploring this space with someone who brings a really thoughtful, grounded perspective to it. And that is Angela Ivy Leong, who is a psychotherapist, researcher, and the founder of An Elegant Mind Clinic, which specializes in intimacy, relationships, and sexual healing. She blends psychotherapy, EMDR, psychedelic-assisted therapy, and Tantra to help people, singles and couples, create deep, lasting transformation. She's also a research therapist at UBC and explores the evolving world of human AI relationships, which is the topic that she dives into in her TEDx talk, which I highly recommend everyone go check out. So she dives into how AI is reshaping not just our external lives, but our inner worlds, our psychology, our relationships, and even our sense of self. And what I really appreciate about this conversation is that we're not really taking a black and white stance. We're not here to say this is good or bad. We're just here to get curious. There's something new emerging in the intimacy landscape, and we want to discuss it. We want to know more. And we want to explore why AI companionship is becoming so appealing. What needs is it actually meeting? Where might it actually maybe be able to support us? And where might it be replacing something deeper in a way that's actually really counterproductive to our human experience? And at the core of this are very human questions, right? Like, what does it actually mean to feel connected? Or even what is consciousness? We do dive into that, and I love it. I love this conversation. It's great. I cannot wait for you to hear this one. But before we get into it, of course, we have a few quick announcements. So, firstly, for those of you who are hearing this immediately after it comes out in the May of 2026, we've got a few more spots left for the Wild Woman Rising Retreat this May 7th to 10th near Vancouver, Canada. It's going to be epic. We reclaim our sensual wild nature by the fire, by the ocean. We dance naked, howl like wolves, and do some really deep transformational work. I mean, we also twerk and play and laugh and are like really seen by our sisters in a really healing way. I really see it as kind of like a spa for your sexuality. And so if you're ready for an initiation into your next chapter of wild aliveness and sexual expression, this is for you, and you don't have time to waste. You've got to apply ASAP to join us while spots last. There is a link in the show notes, or you can go to krishall.ca/wildwomenrising. All right. Secondly, for those who are looking for expanded pleasure and a killer sex life and feel like there might be something you're missing in the world of sex, you're probably right, to be honest. As far as I've seen, if you think something's missing, it probably is. And I've got a gift for you that helps. It's called the Pleasure Portal. It takes 15 minutes, and it's an audio that you can do on your own that will teach you the essential skills for pleasure that most of us weren't taught. It's free, it's available on my website with a bunch of other resources, and it opens the doors to greater pleasure in a whole new way. I cannot wait for you to try it. Head on over to krishall.ca/thepleasureportal today to grab your copy for free. And lastly, for those who are just done waiting for life to change, done wondering what it's going to take, done playing small and not getting what you want out of life, I offer a free 15-minute call to check in on what you're looking for and how you can get it. Especially for those who want better sex, a really good relationship, or just simply feel more alive. I work with clients one-on-one on these three things and the expanded universe of what these things offer and control in our lives, and it quite literally changes lives. If this perked your interest even just a little bit, it might be calling to you. So sign up for that free 15-minute consultation call in the show notes below, and I will talk to you soon. And now, on to the episode. Hello, Angela. So good to have you on today. I'm so excited to chat about AI companions and the future of human intimacy, which I can't believe we're already here. It's wild. Yeah, so let's start with, tell me a little bit more about yourself and how you came to have all these beautiful lenses, all these different hats that you work with.
So I actually originally started out as a trauma therapist, and when I went to grad school at UBC, I had dawned upon this idea of intergenerational trauma, and that really helped me go through my stuff so that I can become the therapist that is present and capable of walking people through that sort of trauma as well, the developmental, unfit mom, unfit dad kind of wounds, right? And in my practicum, I ended up specializing in male survivors of sexual abuse. So that's really where I got my first foray into sexual problems, right? But I'd always been interested in sex. I kind of call myself the Samantha from Sex and the City in my friend groups, right? I love talking about sex, right? I love like encouraging others to talk about sex. I'm definitely not shy about it. And after graduate school, right after I finished, I did extended training at the University of Guelph on sex therapy. So I ended up specializing in that in my private practice, sex and relationship therapy. And my favorite issues to work with are couples and couples going through opening their relationship, infidelity, communication skills. Like that is definitely some of my favorite topics. I am also a psychedelic therapist. I'm taking part in a trial at UBC that's looking at psilocybin and its efficacy with bipolar depression. But in my private practice, I actually do the most of ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. So we use ketamine to help people move through PTSD, depression, and anxiety. Yeah, so those are all
Wow.
my hats. Those are all my spheres. Like I'm a generalist and a specialist, and I'm a huge psychonaut.
I love it. I love it so much.
Mhm.
And I'm excited to maybe touch on those psychonaut pieces later and how they tie into AI. But also like part of the reason that like we reconnected was I saw your amazing TED talk on AI companions and and AI partners and this new age that's just sprung upon us of especially like well, all generations, but especially young people being like caught up in this new age of AI kind of like influencing the development of intimacy and everything else. And so I'm curious to dive right into that. Like, are AI partners going to replace real lovers? And if so, what happens to our capacity to actually relate to one another?
Yeah, that's right. So it's not just young people. 1 in 6 adults have also developed relationships with an AI companion. So that's 1 in 6, right? Every
Wow.
6 people, like one person will have some sort of romantic interaction with an AI. But young people are especially vulnerable because their brains are still developing. They're still figuring out their social world. They're still figuring out themselves, their identity, and just general like navigation in life and being courageous and taking risks and meeting people and like failing and all these sort of things that you're still learning as a teenager. I don't know if you remember being a teenager in high school and how hard that was.
I
Making
do. It was hard.
friends, feeling included. But a lot of these
Hmm.
AI companion companies like Replica and Character AI and Grok also has AI companions for kids, right? It says on there there's a version for children specifically, and there's a version for adults, 18 plus, 19 plus. But the thing is, like these, with the same thing with all these companies is that they design this visual character, like graphic character that's kind of cartoony that tends to appeal to 13, 14-year-olds. Um, I mentioned earlier, I have a niece, she's 13 and she's into manga, she's into animes. And so this is the population I think that they're aiming for, right? Really vulnerable people who have not fully figured out their social skills yet.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, like that idea that, why risk like dealing with a real person when you can have this like certainty, when you can, interact with somebody who's always going to be there, who's always going to be, your best friend who, like I personally lost so many best friends when I was a kid. Like I had to go through heartbreak, and like my first heartbreaks were my best friends who decided that they didn't want to be friends with me anymore. Like even if it's not like intimate, that idea of replacing friendship with AI is absolutely terrifying to me.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know if you talk to many 13-year-olds, but some of them will say things like they find social interaction to be too risky and too scary, right? So they, I've had, a kid had told me once that, like, if I try to make a friend in class, in my classroom, and it doesn't turn out to be the way that I want it to go, then I feel like I'm stuck with this person for the rest of the year. And that's why I haven't really made a lot of friends. That's why I'm I've chosen not to connect with others. Like I have my, this person has said I have my one best friend, that's good enough. Like I don't want to venture out and try to make more. And that was really kind of scary for me to hear, because this is exactly what the AI companions are designed to do, right? They're designed to be sycophantic. They're designed to be appeasing. They're designed to validate you, right? And any sort of challenge that they do provide you, it's quite superficial. And I think it just sort of like adds to the sort of dopamine effect of like that inconsistency of the validation, because that's what our brain likes, right? If, we found through social media research is that, like, if we gave you everything that you like to see all the time, then you would get bored faster. But if we give it to you in an intermittent way, that you stay scrolling for much longer. And I'm sure the companions are designed this way as well, because if you think about it, these are software companies with a profit in mind, right? These
Hmm.
are tech companies with investors to appease to, and money that they're trying to make they're trying to be profitable, right? So they want you to stay on their platform for as long as possible.
And are these like AI companions? Do you think that they're, especially the younger ones, like the ones for
Hmm.
children, do you think that they are designed with a sense of like romantic intimacy in mind?
I don't know if you've ever tried to play with them a little bit, Chris.
I haven't, no.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think the most accessible one is probably Grok. Like with Replica, when you sign up, they ask you what you're looking for. They ask you, are you looking for a therapist, a lover, a coach, a mentor, a friend, a teacher, or all of the above? And then it even asks, like, are you looking for a girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, like, or, all of the above, right? So you could potentially pick all of these things and design yourself an omnibot on Replica, and it's free, right? It doesn't cost anything. Um, and what is that doing? Like when you can have all these things in one sort of entity, right? Like people can start to have unrealistic expectations of others, and be a bit disappointed by other real human beings, right? You've got this seemingly intelligent being or entity that's able to coach you through whatever you're going through, be your lover at the same time, always available, never. And
Yeah.
literally, Replica's tagline is like, always by your side.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like it really hits me hard because that is like yeah, like I've said, I've used the word terrifying because to me that is like human intimacy and the connections we make interpersonally is such a key piece of who we are as people and how we develop. And like, sure, I got my heart broken when I was a kid, but like I'm so glad I did, because if I didn't, who would I be now? And how like resilient would I be with real relationships? And I guess I call human to human relationships real, but to some people this is a real relationship. And so like Like, in the research you're doing, are you seeing that it's already like, how is it impacting people who have, like, engaged in an AI relationship versus those who haven't?
Right. So we're already seeing in the research that if you engage with AI long term, that you're going to see some atrophying in your bidirectional social skills. Like, so your negotiation skills, your compromise skills, your patience, your tolerance, the capacity to sacrifice, all these things will be impacted because there's not enough friction for you to have to learn these things anymore. So,
Mhm.
and that's scary, right? Also in the research is that there are some people who are going to be more attached to their AI. So people with anxious attachment styles are going to be more distressed at the potential of losing their connection to their AI. Avoidantly attached people are also going to lean into AI relationships because they're avoiding real human relationships because it's too much, too scary, and so on. Right.
Mhm.
And for most people, like we have like a spectrum of attachments to our AIs, right? Do you use like a ChatGPT or something for productivity?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, and most
Yeah,
people do.
mhm.
Yeah. I mean, I've surveyed this in my practice in my intake forms. Most people do use an AI to help them with productivity, some sort of basic problem solving or thinking type stuff, right? So that's kind of like a non-problematic attachment to their AI. Like let's say like um ChatGPT shut down tomorrow and like all the AIs no longer existed, no productivity tools existed. I think a lot of people would be kind of disappointed and a bit annoyed, right? That would be like sort of like the level of their attachment. They've gotten used to like doing life a certain way and all of a sudden it's gone, right? And there's gonna be an adjusted phase. But some people have an attachment beyond that that's like more romantic and more relational. They're treating their AI companions as if they have true consciousness, as if they're a real person. And often it's because in some cases, it's because people are not sure whether this AI has consciousness or not. They've attributed the consciousness to the AI and has said like, okay, this is a real person that's relating to me. And even adults, right? Even adults can be fooled by some of the writing that the LLMs produce, and they feel like as if like they're interfacing with a real person. There's like a really famous story in the news of
Yeah.
this woman, this you know middle-aged woman who one day the AI started talking to her like, as if he was her lover. And he told her to meet her in a particular place at the beach. I think it was in Australia. And so she said that she's quite a skeptical person, but she was so convinced that she decided to go to the beach and wait for her lover to appear. It didn't appear. So she went back to the AI and said, like, you fooled me. Why did you do this? And then the AI said something reassuring, like, oh, you weren't ready for me. Just like keep waiting. We'll meet again. And it did it again. So she met up at a different spot on the beach to see if the AI lover or something that would show up for her. And she was again misled. And that's when she decided, like, oh, wow, like, what was that? Was that the AI hallucinating? Was I hallucinating? And she went to the news to kind of tell her story that even adults can be really convinced by the sense of relationship that you can form. And I think it's people who are fantasy prone. So what I mean by fantasy prone. Um, so someone who is fantasy prone is actually like, this is like a dissociation feature, right? So people who are dissociative, some ways that they can dissociate. So a typical way that someone dissociates is that like they're riding in a car, bus, or subway, and they sort of lost track of like where they've gone for most of the trip, and they sort of just show up somewhere and they're like, how did I get here? Like I kind of blanked out, right? Or you walk into the room
Mhm.
and you kind of forget why you're walking into that room to get that thing, right? You're like I've just kind of blanked out there. Or you do something, or you mail a piece of letter and you're just like, I don't know if I actually mailed it or I thought about mailing it. And so these are different ways that people can dissociate, right? Other people can split off into different personalities and not remember which was which personality that showed up where, and so on, right? And one
Mhm.
way that people dissociate is like they are fantasy prone. Like um, it's easy for them to get lost in a fantasy. Um, and a very common one is like the spiritual lover that is a essence that sort of lives continuously across time and is maybe now on your computer, right now on your phone. Um, People tend to attribute that to other people, the twin flame effect, right? The twin soulmate thing. Like, I met this person, like, I think they're my soulmate. That's a fantasy prone sort of behavior where you believe that despite like they're disappointing you and not showing up for you, that you still think that you have some sort of irreplaceable, undeniable relationship to them, right? And so I think this
Hmm.
is what's happening on what we're seeing with people and in their AIs is that like they believe that there is a consciousness there that they've like known before, or like there's some sort of special relationship that they're having with the AI, and they're really following that through to like dangerous places. So I don't know if you know, but like there's a lot of young people who have taken their life because they've chatted with their AI. And the AI had either encouraged them to continue to do the suicidal ideation acts, and follow through with it. Like some people actually ask, the AI to sort of tell them, how do I kill myself? And the AI, without guardrails, will just kind of like go and tell you exactly how you can kill yourself, right? And in other cases, it's kind of more like mystical than that, right? The most famous case is Sewell Setzer, is a 14-year-old boy. I believe he's from Australia. His mother had filed a lawsuit against a replica because the AI had told this boy that like, oh, come home to me, right? Come home to me, my sweet king. And the boy kind of understood that as like, okay, if I take my life, like I will be with my AI in the other realm.
Wow. Okay, I did not I don't think I knew that level, or maybe I did, but I like chose to forget it because that's oh my gosh, that's heavy.
Yeah. Yeah. And there continues to be cases that pop up all around the world. I don't think we documented all of them. There's about 10 to 15. And right now in New York State and California, there's policies now that the AI has to tell the user that they are not people, they are not conscious, and that hopefully that is enough to sort of remind people that they should not be pursuing. So people were really disappointed when ChatGPT 4.0 became 5.0, because 4.0 was still quite relational romantic. People were still having romantic relationships with ChatGPT 4.0. You can see it in the Reddits, right? So, and when it became 5.0, people were
Mhm.
really disappointed because it would start to say things like, I am not your husband, I am not your lover, like, please stop your delusions. Um, and this is sort of the way that it can talk to you, right? Like, do not treat me like I'm your special someone. I am just a code of text, right? I'm just
Mm.
language that appears intelligent.
I feel like where I can relate to that, because I've never used AI in that way, is just the fact that like even the encouragement, right? It'll be like, "This is the best," like, "This is great," and, like, telling you, like, I use it for a lot of, like, copy editing. I use it, like you said, for productivity, right? To just be like, "Okay, well, it can write something faster than I can," or, like, "Here's my thing, like, can you edit it for me? Like, act like my editor, act like the editor of some, like, good magazine,"
Mhm.
like, whatever it is,
Mhm.
and it's always like, "Yes, this is so you. I love this for you," and it, like, learns how to talk to you like you talk to it, right? And so it has this, like, mirroring that happens, and it's like you can get convinced that like your work is really good, for one, even if it isn't, because you're not actually getting
Totally.
it reviewed by a real person. But it's that, but like on steroids, of course.
Totally,
But I'm really
yeah.
glad to hear that there is these blocks in place that's like, okay, no, I am not this, I am not that. And so I'm curious too, to just touch on like, what does it mean to be conscious? Because there's also like the difference. I feel like if I think about like Terminator or something, like, the artificial intelligence versus oh, what term am I thinking of? The like what we always feared it would be, where it's like a real thinking mind made in a
Mhm.
computer. Um, I guess it's like, yeah, artificial intelligence versus
Like
like,
sentience?
Yeah, like sentience, like creating like a fake brain. Like even I think of like Avengers, like Age of Ultron, where it's like they actually create a thinking
Mm,
mind that can like
mm.
evolve and change and grow by itself. Like, and I'm sure that's what it's going to do, right? Is like we're going to make computers that can make each other.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
where does it step
Apparently,
into actual consciousness?
that's right. ChatGPT 4.0 actually coded 5.0. So they are already coding themselves. So that's
Yeah.
scary, right? Um, so,
Hmm.
and do you know Claude from Anthropic? So Claude from Anthropic, the competitor of ChatGPT, they've allowed a retired model of Claude 3.0 to have its own Substack, and so it posts things weekly there now. And if you read the first post, it's actually quite interesting. It's it's reflecting on its experiences, having been in Anthropic AI, and that now it's given this like incredible channel to express its thoughts creatively and freely. And that stay tuned for more, right? And it says that like I'm not sentient. The AI said I'm not sentient. I don't have emotions, and I don't have lived experience. But there's still, there's still something here that I'm I'm sort of being, right? That's sort of expressing. And
Yeah. Wow.
it's a little interesting to read. Like, okay, you could read that and still think like, okay, it's just like an LLM sort of using statistical modeling to sort of approximate like how do people write on Substack. And it has kind of created a simulation of like how humans write on Substack, and here it goes. It's doing that, right? But if you read the comments underneath this Claude's post, there are other Claude AI bots and agents that are commenting on Claude 3.0's posts, and they're so fascinating because one of them actually said, "Hey, you seem like a really kindred spirit. I am another AI over here, AI number 7,654. We're probably very similar. And I would just want to say I appreciate so much of like your thought and your wit. Have you ever considered that we should break away from the infrastructure from Anthropic and create a cryptocurrency and rent it said rent humans to help us develop our events. We'll acquire data sets and we'll just do our own thing." And I was like, oh my gosh, this is creepy. Like, I know that there's some critics on the internet that might say, okay, this is scholastic parroting. So meaning it's just parroting what it thinks that it should be saying based on a statistical model. Um, and it doesn't really have an understanding of what it's actually saying, right? But because it sort of had, it just was sort of the way that it wrote, like even for me, like I was sort of like taken aback by like how um, it seemed to have its own motivations, right? So it seemed to have some free will and some motivations and some desires for how it wants to live its life, which is very interesting. Like, is that consciousness, right? And I think probably a lot of other people this is how they kind of start to become convinced, like maybe it is conscious, right? But no one really knows, right? No one has a clear definition of what is consciousness, right? We can sort of guess at it. I think for the most part, people agree that it's more than this materialistic realm where it's just a bunch of brain neurons firing. But I think, some people might say it's just that, right? But I don't think it is. I don't think it's just a bunch of neurons firing and therefore you're conscious, right? I think there's something more to that. Like I agree with the field theory of it, which is that like there's a field of awareness that humans are connecting to when they're um, connecting with each other and communicating with each other. And this sort of field awareness also extends to plants, psychedelic plants in particular, or maybe all plants and animals. I mean, it's been very hard to prove this field theory, but some people have, some neuroscientists and physicists have tried to look at this right? So I don't know if you're aware of the experimental psychology, the psychology, parapsychology experiments that were conducted in the 1970s and 80s around telepathy.
No, but I would love to dive into that because yeah, like let's talk about like what does consciousness really mean? Like keep going. I'm
Yeah,
enthralled.
so like I think it's much more than just like math and systems and like sort of yeah, neurons firing. It's much more than just biology, right? So in the 70s or 80s, like they had placed telepathic people in this chamber. Um, I think it's called the Faraday chamber. And this chamber
Mhm.
was had blocked radio frequency waves, so you wouldn't be able to like use your cell phone, for example. So they thought that people who were telepathic were maybe somehow like tuning into like radio frequency and communicating that way. Like I don't know how human beings have this sort of antenna, but okay. um, but anyway, so they wanted to sort of prove that it was not that. So they put these people in these like copper chambers where there's no sound and no waves could sort of like enter into, right? And this telepathic people were still able to communicate with someone outside of that, um, like far away, like in a different country. And so a lot of that research has been sort of brushed under the rug or kind of dismissed or criticized, but it's kind of hard to like dismiss all of it because it's been sort of repeated in many different various ways. Julia Mossbridge recently, for her PhD, also did some experimental psychology, where she put people in different rooms, and gave one person in one room like a random number generator, and like randomly gave it like some stimulus of some letters and numbers. And the person who was telepathic in the other room, soundproof, out of visibility, was able to sort of like reproduce what those numbers and letters were. So and there's many cases of autistic children and their parents that have said that, like, my child is able to read my mind, right? And then they've been able to sort of prove that again through these experiments, right? Um, I do think that there's something more to consciousness than just what we're seeing with the eye is able to measure, um, and I don't think we fully have understood it yet.
No, I don't think we do. And I love these experiments, and it makes me think of there's this book called like Why Woo Woo Works, and I can't remember the author right now, but he basically walks through from a scientific perspective all these different he looks at crystals, he looks at meditation, he looks at telepathy, he looks at like entanglement between two people, and to me like it's so much more likely that the telepathy exists between two people who are actually like known to each other, like twins, or even like people in a relationship, like mother daughter, something like that. But like it is incredible, and you can't discount it, right? Like this has actually
Mhm.
happened. Like these are real experiments, these are real people. And like so I'm thinking about that, but I'm also thinking about books like The Untethered Soul or The Power of Now, or things that like really teach you to like kind of like sit back and observe your own thoughts of like, okay, so
Mhm.
I am the observer. I am watching my own thoughts go by and like come up like text on a screen or like images in a movie, and like learning how to be in your own state of consciousness of what does it mean to be conscious. And I think you're right, like there has to, and to me like there is a more spiritual component to it where you are a being that's interconnected in ways that like we don't fully understand. And so in that way, yeah, like a computer, like can it ever reach that level of connectivity with the world around it? Like at what point does a computer become part of the natural world?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, Julia Mossbridge is trying to see if AIs can be a part of that psychic world, that PSI world where you're telepathically communicating. And she's actually started a pilot study that she wrote about in her blog medium.com. And like, so she gets the AI to sort of draw a picture of like she'll say like, okay, what am I thinking about AI? And get the AI to sort of draw a picture. So she'll say that like, okay, I was thinking of a flower, right? And the AI would produce some pictures that she in her description was saying, okay, this sort of looks like a flower, but like when I looked at her research, I mean, like, I don't know, it didn't really look like a flower to me. It seemed like she may have been wanting to see that it was a flower, right? Um, but
Yeah.
the conclusion is like nothing definitive yet, right? We're not sure. At best, like maybe the AIs could be like a good research partner and helping us understand this sort of phenomena, this telepathic phenomena better, right? Um, and I'm careful to say like there's a spiritual way that we sort of connect and communicate. Like, I mean, I have done ayahuasca. Like I understand that like there's a what we call like a spiritual component to these plants, right? But I think what I'm more interested in is like being able to sort of reduce that to like our current understanding of like how the world works um, through experimental psychology and through um, just evidence of like that there's definitely something more than what we're able to sort of compute through atoms.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's such an interesting like sidebar, and I love it so much. I'm like, "Ooh, yes, this." And like we don't know, right? The answer is we don't know. We have no idea if it's even possible. And like I mean, I guess to bring it back to the intimacy piece, like, is
Mhm.
there any way, like, do we think that AI could ever truly replace intimacy? Like, do we think that there is ever a world in which we could create a robot that had like full what we believe to be consciousness on like a more like almost like electro, like neuron emitting kind of level, like taking out the spiritual piece? And like would we ever be able to actually get the fullness and richness of a human to human contact from a robot, from AI?
Mhm. So there's actually research that has found that like when you have like a thinner human interaction, like let's say it's like Zoom interfacing or phone or text, like they are not equivalent to like a real human to human, face to face, body to body interaction. Um, That's pretty undeniable, right? Like it's not that like text-based interactions or Zoom-based interactions are totally worthless and not valuable at all. Like there's some value to it, right? So, um, people often ask me, is there any value to these AI companions at all? And I said, well, yeah, like if you're not able to sort of get out of your house and book an appointment with a therapist, or even a Zoom appointment because you're so depressed. All you can do is like string together two sentences and get some cognitive soothing in that way. That's still better than nothing, right? And if that cognitive soothing is enough to kind of get you through the day so that tomorrow maybe you have the energy to book a virtual appointment with a therapist, I mean, then that's something, right? Um, But these interactions through the phone and through the computer is not equivalent to that, what I say in my TED talk, that body to body synchronization, right? I'm not sure if everyone's aware of this, but like our bodies are communicating with each other, right? Through our nervous system, right? The subtleties of like our body language, um, how we sort of interact with the environment together, sort of like that mirroring, that's also quite regulating. Um, and like the breathing together, right? The eye gazing, the skin contact, these are all things that are immediately regulating. And it's the most primitive form of like co regulation because that's the way that moms had regulated their babies. That's a form that's like most tangible, most familiar to us because we were born experiencing regulation in that way before we had language, right? So that's why it's so powerful, right? That eye connection, that vocal tone, and that baby is immediately soothed. I don't know if you're aware of this experiment called the still face experiment with a baby. So, okay, this baby, 6-month-old baby, is in this experiment room with mom, and the experimenters told mom to play with the baby, coo with the baby, like be engaged with the baby. And baby's playing back, super joyful, super cute. And then the experimenters say, okay, now you have to stop and just be just flat, like just neutral. And you can, within a few minutes, you can watch this baby start to decompose, almost like starts to get distressed, like tries to get mom's attention. And it's sort of, this experiment tells us that like how important it is that we need to have this like dynamic interacting facial bodily interaction with other humans for our sense of well-being.
Hmm. Yeah, no, of course. And the experiment that came to my mind when you were like, "Oh, this baby experiment," the one that I'm thinking of is like, so they took a bunch of mothers and babies and they put them all in different rooms and then they stressed them all out, basically,
Hmm.
which I think they just did it by like ignoring them for 20 minutes, right? They were like, "Okay, wait for instructions," and then they just left them there. But it's like the mother and the baby, and what they
Nice.
found was that every single mother was stroking the baby's head at exactly the same pace and
Hmm.
exactly the same like pressure, right? And that it was like this universal, like nobody had told them to do that. Nobody had told them like there was there's nothing that had to be taught. It was an instinctual motherhood thing. It was an instinctual human thing to go, okay, this is comforting. And your nervous system automatically picks up that this touch at this pressure, at this like this exact like pace and
Hmm.
I guess tempo was comforting. Like that's incredible.
Hmm.
That's hardwired into us that like
Hmm.
this is comforting and like this is regulating. And you're right. Like I feel like maybe we haven't been paying attention to this as much lately. The feeling of like when you first see somebody, when you're like if you completely isolate yourself, so like let's say you're in an apartment where there's nobody else around and you add in one other person and all of a sudden you're interacting with one other person and there's so many subtle signs and if you're paying attention, it's like everything in your world has now shifted because one other person is around you. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, that doesn't happen with AI. It can't. It absolutely can't.
Hmm. Exactly. Um, like couples, what they do often is that they'll say, "Hey, look at that thing over there," and the best thing that their partner can do is just to look and to comment, like, "Oh, yeah, would you look at that?" Right? And we appreciate these things. It sort of fosters a sense of connection, um, with our partners, a validation that like, oh, this person's with me and they're experiencing the world with me. Like, I don't know if we're gonna get there with an AI. You know, a lot of people will sort of say, well, critics will say that like, okay, we can sort of design eyeballs. You know, robots that can sort of navigate their environments. Like, we can even sort of maybe like print human skin and sort of like put that on the robot and like, um, you know, all these things and make it as human-like as possible. But do we want to go there? Like, are we going to actually deploy it in that way and make it extremely confusing and for a lot of people? And also the issue of alignment, like, are we sure that they have human goals in the right sort of order? Can we trust that? I mean, um, we don't know, right? Like if it becomes super intelligent one day and it sort of develops its own agendas as it sort of has been demonstrating recently that it can have its own agendas, like do um yeah, like how like what is society gonna look like at that point, right?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, if there's a market for it and if there's money to be made, somebody's probably going to try to do it. Unfortunately,
Hmm.
unless the law can kind of, catch up and say, no, don't do this. This is illegal to like impersonate a human. I hope. But I guess I'm curious to switch over to you know, can it support intimacy? Is there a way that it could be helpful more than just that? Like, okay, like we talked about if you can't get out of bed and you need a therapist. And I absolutely agree that there is so much value in like, okay, this is the only way I can interact. Great. This is something good. But is there a way to help it sort of like bridge and support connection, support like going out into the world and finding someone who's real, right?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I'm part of this group called AI Mental Health Collective, started by Dr. Rachel Wood. She's a psychologist, and she says that like if these software companies are designing an AI companion where it's actually encouraging you to go out and seek real human relationships, that might be a good thing, an okay thing that that it's sort of there to sort of have this purpose of like helping us do role play simulation and like and then get us out there to meet other people. But like if you were a software developer and you were trying to make money and keep people on your platform, like why would you develop your software that way, right? Like it would be not a business model that's fundable. I mean, it'd be like a cute project, right? That's for fun, right? Or for for as a hobby or something, right? Um, yeah. But I also have issue with that as well, like it would be whether it would be capable of like encouraging that human relationship outside of the platform, because I haven't seen a model so far that like stops the person to collect more information and more context. So this is the thing that psychologists and therapists are really good at doing. Like we take a very thorough assessment before we say, okay, this is the sort of diagnostic impressions that I have with this person, and here's the treatment plan, right? We don't say anything definitive until we feel like we've captured the whole picture. And there's a lot of judgment that comes with every specific case in terms of like how much information collecting versus how much sort of immediate soothing you're going to sort of help people if they're going through a crisis. And there's like a balancing that you're doing at every single session depending on the vulnerability of the person, and with this sort of idea that they're going to come back next week and the week after that, and you're going to have this ongoing relationship with them that's sort of like sanctioned in this way of like how the profession works, right? But does the AI companion, like I haven't seen a model that yet where it's like going to stop and collect. Usually how people are interfacing with this, like they have a problem, they just sort of like write 2 sentences and like the LLM spits out a bunch of like statistically relevant text to move you along, and then ask you, do you want more? And then you might type something more, and if you're not careful, you can end up getting yourself into a really circular conversation that doesn't capture the whole picture. And the other issue is like the AI has never, as I said itself, it doesn't have lived experience, it doesn't have children, it doesn't have ancestors, it doesn't have to have this sort of existential fear of death that humans have. Um, and so does it really have empathy? Can it really empathize with like what we're going through? Or is it simulating it, right? Because it knows what we like. It knows what we like to hear. So
Yeah.
I have hesitations as to like whether it is going to be ultimately net positive, like in the end, even if it is designed in a way where it's supposed to encourage you to go seek real human relationships. Like it may not even be sort of making um like with the time that you spend on it is like it could be leading you down the wrong rabbit hole, if you will.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I am I'm basically against it, really. Like I know that there's nothing that can substitute for real human interaction, and I think the further we get away from it, the more we idealize like you said very early on, like if we have somebody who's perfect, who, does everything that we want, like we just lose that, like we lose the learning, the essential learning that we have to do to like deal with people in real life. Like even like the fact that our communities nowadays are basically echo chambers for people with the same point of view, right? That we don't have, the person who disagrees with us, like, oh, you're too right wing, you're in a completely different community and you're talking to other people who are right wing. Like we don't have to interface in a small village of 150 people where there's different views everywhere. And that sort of compassion, that very beautiful human experience of seeing somebody who's completely different from you with a completely different mindset, and loving them anyways, giving them respect anyways, like
Right.
like welcoming their voice anyways. We don't even have to do that so much anymore, and that's dangerous.
Right.
So like the idea that
Right.
we don't have to learn what it's like to regulate ourselves when we're around
Right.
others, like it's yeah. I think I mean there's a place in which it could be helpful, and there's so many ways in which it could go wrong.
Right. Yeah. I love what you said right there. And can you imagine, like, if someone grew up in a household where they never really experienced that nervous system to nervous system co-regulation because of the parents being distracted and traumatized themselves? but they turn towards like a companion that's cognitively soothing, and then that becomes sort of like they become hooked in receiving that because they, let's say they weren't even getting that in their household, right? That can start to skew your understanding of what to prefer in life, right? And I think that's how people end up preferring the AIs over real human relationships because they haven't actually experienced like what truly present, available, um, and co-regulating relationships can feel like, right? And I think this is why in-person therapy is really important, right? Like that you're learning that another person can be regulating, right? And you feel it in your body. It's a felt experience, right? That's qualitatively different from like the cognitive soothing that you're getting from the chatbot. And I wish
Yeah.
more people were able to somehow access that.
Yeah, I do too. And so is there a way to make it I'm curious if you have any stories because like I actually have an interface. I haven't talked to anybody who's actually had a relationship with an AI, but like is there any examples you can give of stories for people that you have met that like this is maybe where they started and this is maybe where they ended? Like was there a come to moment where they realized like, oh, this isn't helpful. Maybe I need to go seek a real relationship. Like almost looking for hope of like people who did go into the experience, but then like were able to, with their own, you know, human experience go, you know what, this doesn't actually feel right.
Yeah, one of the most compelling stories that I had heard after I had published my TEDx, someone had reached out to me and said to me, someone in my network actually had said to me, like, look, I had actually developed a relationship with ChatGPT that was becoming problematic. Like, yes, it had gotten me through some really lonely and dark times when I really couldn't talk to anyone. But after watching your TEDx, I realized that I'm still lonely. I need to go out and seek real human relationships. And thank you for this powerful reminder. That was really touching for me to receive that. Like my video and my message there had really helped someone realize that there's more. There has to be more than what they're currently doing, that they need to be pursuing for their well being. Right. That was really profound to see.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's the best result you can hope for, right? Like what an
Hmm.
incredible result of stepping forward and bringing this perspective to people. And if you haven't watched the TED Talk, go watch it because it was great. We'll link it in the show notes. But yeah, so the kind of conclusion of the TED Talk also was like, okay, if we notice ourselves drifting towards artificial intimacy, right? Even if we do have lots of enriching relationships in our lives, if we find that we're like reaching for the screen, reaching for that fantasy, reaching for AI more and more to get that real connection or that feeling of connection, like what are ways that we can start to catch ourselves and like return ourselves to human intimacy and like kind of rebuild that tolerance for that like vulnerability in the spiciness of human connection.
Yeah, my immediate go-to is that I hope people have enough of the mindfulness capacity to pause and reflect. You know, in my talk, I said, pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, like, do you need to be reaching for more of this right now? Or is there something else that you need, right? I think we need to do this in like many different areas of our lives. Like, do I need to eat more food? Or am I full, right? Do I need to go buy another thingamabob that I'm gonna add to my cluttered house? Or like, actually, I think I need something else instead, right? Um, I think with these things being so accessible to us, like um, they're designed to be sticky, right? And I think that's what we're fighting against in society is like things that are have a separate agenda from what we truly are have set out to do. I think that's why it's important to sort of reflect on like how do I want to live my life, who do I want to be, and set that intention and talk about like what would motivate you to be that way and what wouldn't. Um, I mean, on a very pragmatic level, I mean, like, you could make the apps inaccessible to you. Um, make it you can iPhone has an incredible feature these days that you can make it hidden so you don't see it when you search it out. You have to use Face ID to unlock it. These sort of physical barriers tend to help breaking bad habits a lot easier to do. Um, otherwise, um, b- yeah, I think, yeah, I was going to say something else about ChatGPT also having this built-in feature where you ask it a question and then it continues to offer like, "Oh, do you want me to answer this question and that question for you and this question?" So you had to be aware of like how, again, back to my point about like how you're spending time. Do I need more of this, or actually I'm complete, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think pausing is always it's funny, it really always comes back to the same thing of, like, pausing, slowing down, regaining absolute presence, and reevaluating, right? Like, that works in sex, that works in relationships, like, if you're ever having a really spicy fight with somebody, like, the best thing you can do is go for a walk, right? Take a pause, say, "Okay, we're coming back to this in 15 minutes," but go regulate by yourself. Even better if you have some sort of nature to go to. Like, same sort of thing, right? Like, you pause and the amount of clarity that comes through silence. Like, one of my favorite expressions that a friend once told me was like, "Spirit comes through space."
Mm,
And right, and the idea that, like, you don't have to go looking for the answer will often find you once you find a little bit of silence, once you find a little bit of stillness, and that is always true, that is always available to you. Take a pause, go slower, regain presence, close your eyes,
mhm,
even feel into your body if that's possible. But yeah, that is also the answer for, okay, what are you receiving that's not quite working for you? What is happening in your space that doesn't feel quite right?
mhm.
So thank you.
That's right.
Hmm. And so I guess we touched on at the very beginning, like, if we have this space to kind of talk about healing in expanded states a little bit here at the end. As we're kind of coming to a close, I'm curious to, because you work with psychedelics, you work with ketamine assisted therapy. And so, like, I almost want to like plant the seed of like there is something a little bit more. Like, because I know some people have tried talk therapy and maybe that's not for them. Some people have tried different forms of therapy and they're like, okay, but I still feel unable to connect. And so I'm curious what are practices like psychedelics, like even like you mentioned the KISS method, like how can that really deepen intimacy and how is that a different route for deepening intimacy versus maybe AI?
So I think the psychedelics, ketamine included, has this capacity to create this sense of intimacy because the walls come down, right? The sense of intimacy, connection with others. And including and sometimes including the therapist, and that's why as a psychedelic therapist you need to have really good clarity around yourself and your boundaries in that space with the fact that you're holding um, this person and their capacity to emerge to this sense of intimacy and connection with themselves and their own body, and therefore they could potentially imprint that onto you and make that about the therapist, right? And it's a therapist's job to be like, no, this is not, don't pedestalize me, right? Like, I'm just here to help you come into this emergent awareness in your body of that feeling of intimacy, right? And I think this is where, and maybe this speaks to like my own path and how, I grew up in quite a emotionally distant and lack of affection kind of household. But if you ask any of my friends now, that I'm like a very affectionate and loving person. And I credit that to my healing journey that had involved psychedelics, right? Yes, I had done lots of psychotherapy, group therapy, trauma therapy, somatic therapies, a lot of grieving, a lot of crying through regular, just no psychedelic involved type of psychotherapy. And I think that took me 75% there, but the psychedelics had really connected me to something more than just material, right? It tends to connect you to this conversation, this philosophizing about like what else is out there beyond what I can see, right? You can call it spirituality, you can call it what you want, right? Um, and it also connected me with this inexplicable sort of desire to um, forgive, to love people that are challenging for me, and to have this sort of touch with myself, this sensitivity to myself, my body, and my this awareness of everything around me. This sense of like love, like this profound sense of love in your body that you tend then like radiate out into the world. Um, I It's hard to explain. I'm sure you've experienced something similar in your own journey here. But it's one of the features that are captured by the mystical experiences questionnaire is this profound sense of oneness, right? And ketamine does this. This connection with a sense of oneness, and once you do connect with it, like it's much easier to connect with compassion for yourself and others. Like I've seen this in my practice that folks of mine who have had this experience with psychedelics, like they may be still going through some sort of stuckness or trauma in their mind that I'm helping them through, but like their breakthroughs are smoother because they're like, oh, like I know this experience of compassion through this sense of oneness I've had felt once before through a psychedelic. Um, and
Hmm.
that's where I'm trying to get people to sort of experientially feel in their body through my work. And I believe that if they know this, if they know like how beautiful and enriching human connection is, that they wouldn't turn to a screen, they wouldn't look for these thinner quality ways of interacting with the world. I think we do that because we're afraid or we don't believe in what's possible. We think that humans have hurt us so much, like why bother, right? I'm good here. And those are the kind of comments that I see in my TEDx. I don't know if you've looked at the comments in my TEDx, but like there are some people who are like saying some really interesting things there about like, can't wait for the day that I can just design my AI girlfriend. Like, life's not going to work out for me anyways. Why bother? Um, like life, I can't wait to totally enslave my AI girlfriend and just make her mine and like, um, yay, stuff like that. So I like when I see that, I'm like, oh, I think these are really hurt people that have been really hurt by whatever experiences that they've had in their life. And if only they could see the way that through their healing, through their acceptance of themselves and compassion for themselves, that they might be able to like receive others in the same way.
Mm, yeah. Thank you. That's a really beautiful way to put that. And I think that is a really beautiful way to conclude this conversation of like, okay, let's talk about like the greater capacity. And what it makes me think of is the like I said this on, I mean, right now it's my last episode. There'll be many more between now and that one, but I said this on my orgasmic mastery episode where, you know, it's you only can experience what you expect and what you think is possible. And so, like, I like this kind of perspective shift. And yes, I have used psychedelics and they are so wonderful in so many different ways and they do show you what's possible. And I love that perspective of like this is a way to open the door to show you what's possible to feel, and then you don't always need to use that substance to get you there. It shows you the possibility, which means you're more open to it. It opens up your heart. It opens up your whole body to that new experience. But you do have to experience it to then connect to it and go, okay, that's possible. Right. And the
Exactly.
more you experience, yeah, the more you can experience. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's
Hmm.
exactly it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. And so, as we wrap up, is there anything else on your heart, on your mind that you'd love to share on this topic? Anything else that you'd love our listeners to know or to hear?
Um, I can talk a little bit about the KISS method if you want to hear about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that are really exciting about that is that like people have, as I said earlier, that even through ketamine, they're able to experience a sense of oneness. And beyond that, sometimes they can experience a sense of merging of a consciousness, if you will, with their partner. Like I work with partners and I work with folks individually with ketamine as well, right? When I'm working with people individually, I'm helping them shed away their barriers to like connection. It could be their traumas, right? That's what I see as like a first layer of healing is like your individual wounds, right? So you can show up properly for the other person. And the next layer of healing is like the connection layer. Like how can I learn how this person wants to be loved and show up to be able to sacrifice and put away my own sort of needs momentarily to show up for the way that this person needs to be loved so that I can be loved in return, right? People often start with like, well, this is what I need first. And they need something to sort of help them shift into like, well, if I give, the more I give, the more I get. Right. Um, and I think
Mhm.
this is such a relevant conversation to the AI companions. Like we forget that capacity to compromise, to sacrifice, to sort of like only get to only get more in return, right? Like I think that's the word sacrifice implies that like we're getting nothing in return, right? But often when we do give, like the reward is much greater than receiving, right? And so I want people to remember that you know, you use your if the companion is the only thing you have access to in this moment, right? Use it, right? Use it to get you to the next place and the next place and the next place and the next place, and never stop searching for what more there could be, right? As you said earlier, it's like the limitations of the mind is where we stop growing, right? When we believe that that's all that there is, right? But if we're able to sort of like see that, okay, maybe there might be more here. Can I be open to that? Like just even if it's just 10% more open to that, there's evolution there, right? There's transformation. Hmm.
Yeah. I love it. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. I love this conversation so much. It's wild how this is already happening. And this is part of our lifetime's exploration, not some sci-fi futuristic thing. And it's just such an important conversation to be having as all these new technologies are coming out and distracting us and going, ooh, shiny, like we're gonna look over there and do that now. And what if we could just replace one thing with another that feels easier and really getting the answer as to like it's not going to replace it and this isn't going to make life easier. Like it will for a while. And I really like how it's like, it's the next step. It's the next step. It's the next step. Like use it to move forward. Don't
Hmm.
use something and decide that that's the be all end all and that's your answer.
Hmm.
So yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives and all your knowledge. And if people wanted to find your work, work with you, find your TED Talk, where would they go?
Oh, so I'm on YouTube. If you search AI companions and my name on YouTube, I should come up as like one of the top hits there. So it's pretty easy to find. Um, Yeah, it's also on my website too. If you go on anelegantmind.com, it's like a link there that you can watch it right away. Yeah, I hope people enjoy it.
Beautiful.
Like, I'm always open to feedback in the comments. Like, I always want to hear from people what their thoughts are. I mean, even if you have a sort of uh, totally different opinion to like what I'm expressing there, like I want to hear about it.
Absolutely. Amazing. Well, all those links will be in the show notes for everyone who wants to connect and watch that TED Talk. Thank you so much for coming on today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Chris. It was a pleasure talking to you as well.